Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beyond BMR. And of course, I'm your host, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. Thanks to everybody for coming on in this evening. Joining me in Studio B from Missouri, from the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast, the lovely Krista. I have a great show tonight. Jason McLean joins us. That's right, good old Jason comes back. Talk a little bit about his book and what's going on in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Beyond BMR goes beyond the mysteries of the world. We take you on a deep dive surrounding all of these great phenomena, from Bigfoot to Dogman, UFOs to aliens, time travel to the paranormal. How do all these strange phenomena come full circle? If this is your first time here, please subscribe to Bigfoot and Michigan Rob on YouTube, Texas Front Porch on YouTube, and of course, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast found on YouTube. If you would like to help support what we all do around here, the Super Chat is open. Yes, the Super Chat is a great way to help support what we do around here. Thank you ever so much for that. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and KPNL Radio. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. Before we get into tonight's great show, of course, I have to remind everybody that on Mondays is Texas Front Porch. Text comes on Mondays, 9 o'clock in the East. Tuesdays, Beyond BMR, 9 o'clock in the East. Thursdays, Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, 1 o'clock in the East. Thursday night, the Blondes, the Booze, the Paranormal Podcast comes on 9 o'clock in the East. If you need a little more woo with the booze, we got the Blondes, the Booze, and the Woo. Friday, 9 in the East. Tex has something going on Sundays. Infamous Minds, 6 o'clock in the East. And a newer show with Brandy and Randy, Truth or Tinfoil. Check them out. 5 in the East. That comes on before Tex on Sunday. So go check them out. It should be fantastic. And a couple other things while I'm here at it. Of course, I want to thank everybody who's bought my book, Bigfoot Michigan Rob Presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1, found on Amazon. This is pretty cool. I got the book pinned for everybody. Thanks for those of you that bought it. When Amazon comes calling, please leave a review. And I've got to say, if you look at the magnificent artwork, that was done by Jason McLean. That was kind of cool because if you go to the link for my book, you'll also find Jason's link next to mine. So you get 2 for 1 tonight. Click on the link, then you'll find Jason right next to my name. Click on Jason, and you'll find all his wonderful masterpieces found on Amazon. So give Jason a look. Check out his books. He's a fantastic author and friend of mine. Don't forget, June 7th and 8th is the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. Anderson, Alabama, the Performing Arts Center. Tickets now on sale, $30 online, $35 at the door. June 7th, we're having a meet and greet, which already is booked. It's already booked, but please don't hesitate to come on down because we will take everybody. We'll take you all. And as I was mentioning just a little bit earlier, here's Jason's book. You notice how the size of his book is exactly the same size as my book. But he's got glossy photos. He's got glossy paper in it. You know, mine's just your average paper. But Jason's got a lot in there. We're going to talk a little bit about it tonight. So go check out Jason's books and such. And with that being said, I'm going to bring up the lovely Krista, making sure she's ready. Hello.
Hey.
How the devil are you?
I'm okay until like 10 seconds ago. I realized that I just had an omelet for dinner and I had bacon in my tooth. So it's a good thing, like I figured it out 10 seconds ago.
Well, I'm glad you did, because I don't see any bacon. I see, oh yeah, look good. I saw those pearly whites.
You're looking good. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I don't know if you're fully recovered, but you were down to San Antonio, Texas. Mm-hmm. Little conference you did.
Yep, it was a blast. It was a blast. We had a good time.
The conferences are a great thing to go to. I mentioned the one we're all putting on in Anderson, Alabama. And of course, the speakers, Jason will be one of the speakers. Barton, not only Texas, the MC, You're speaking with Brandy. I'm speaking. Martin Groves, Greg Ogles. I might be missing somebody, but it's a fantastic line. Daryl Denton, of course. So a great lineup of speakers. It's always a good time to connect with people that follow us, people we see in chat, put a name with the face. So that'll be fantastic. In fact, Mr. McLean, who joined you, who I'm going to bring up here in a minute, joined you and Tex and Brandy.
He did.
Without further ado, thanks to everybody for coming on in. And I'm going to bring up my buddy from Texas, Jason McLean.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I'm continuing my streak of sucking at failing of on retiring from podcasting. Jeez,
you really are sucking at this. I'm just saying.
I'm terrible.
You are terrible, Jason. Terrible.
You want to know what's worse? On Monday, well, okay, so I'm going out of town again this weekend down to Austin because my wife has a thing. I will be in Austin Monday night. I'll be on Dave Scott's show Monday night from a hotel
can't get away from it.
I can't. I suck at this. But
3 weeks in a row, you've done shows now after that.
Multiple shows. Like last week was probably I had 3 different shows going on, and then this one, and then on Monday. So it'll slow down. Actually, although I did sign up for another one.
You think?
Jeez, I'm terrible. But you know what? You know what though? I just want to say, because I know a little behind the scenes here. I just want to say how brave and strong Bigfoot Michigan Rob is, considering what happened to him over the weekend. I was like, you know what, dude, you can take this weekend off if you need to mourn and
oh boy,
grieve the loss of the Lions over the weekend. We understand. Maybe take some Valium, just kind of chill out this week. He's like, no, the show must go on.
Yep.
I did a post-mortem show Sunday night at 1 o'clock in the morning as well.
I actually started watching that on my way home tonight, and I'm about 20 minutes into it right now.
Yeah, so it was impromptu. I was sad, feeling alone. I couldn't sleep. I gotta tell you, on that late night show, I said it's the last time I'm talking about the Lions until next football season. So I got it off my chest, and I couldn't sleep anyway. And yeah, we had that game at hand. The first half, we're up 17 points. I love our coach. I mean, he's an up and coming coach. Made some bad decisions, but of course, he didn't play the game. We had enough drops from the team that could have cemented us. We could have been playing like me and Kristen wanted the Chiefs. The Chiefs are now in the Super Bowl. It would have been a great Chiefs versus Lions Super Bowl. We could have did like just a show on that,
Yeah.
But,
well, I was not going to admit this to you. Yeah. If it would have been the Lions and the Chiefs, I am a Chief. I live here in Missouri. However, the Lions would have well deserved it. So honestly, underneath, I wasn't going to tell you, but I would have rooted for the Lions.
Oh, you would have? Well,
I would have. Just because the Chiefs, they're getting it all the time, right?
They get it.
The Lions deserve a chance.
You know what? They do deserve it. And there's next year. Our team is still good. We're not going anywhere. We're fine. Hey, 30 years of futility was finally brought to the end. And I got to tell you, the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, Lions did us proud. I'm not turning my back on the Lions. They went as far as I thought. You got
turn
farther.
Turn your back on them. Do it.
Can't do it. I can't, Jason. Just like I'll never turn my back on you, Jason, even for, not having podcasts anymore. But again, you fail at it, you suck at it, and here you are. But I will say this, Jason, you haven't been on my show in at least a year. I gave you
it's been a while.
Some leeway, so true. And the thing about it is this show, I want to do something different for Jason because Jason, there's another thing that Jason sucks at, everybody. He doesn't promote himself or market his books.
That's true.
Metroplex Monsters, I read this 2 years ago on a plane to Alabama. I haven't read it since. It's not because I did not like it. It's because, I got 15 other books that I've yet to even open.
Yeah.
And I don't think you've done many shows about your book and your writings about the Fort Worth area. So
and even your drawings, because if you look behind my shoulder, right here. Jason, you recognize that?
I do recognize that.
Yeah, Jason did that for me.
It happened so long ago.
Yeah, he's up there with my Bart drawings too. So yeah,
absolutely.
Jason is he doesn't give himself enough credit.
Yeah,
doesn't market himself. I agree.
As I said, Jason did the cover of my book. He did the cover of all of this. Is not. He's written more than one. Again, the link is pinned in this chat, and of course, it's always on my channel. So when you click on my book, Jason's book is right next to it. Click on his name, Jason McLean, and it'll take you to more than. He's written more than one book. He's written like half a dozen, 8, 10. I don't know how many, but they're all there.
Most of them are booklets. Yeah, most of them
some
are
booklets. Yeah, and before we get into this book, Jason, you probably have I'm sure that you've got another book in the works, I imagine, coming down the pipe.
So, yeah, actually, so I kind of have a couple things happening. Once we get a little bit closer to and we know when they're going to come out, I'll give y'all some more information. But I've sold 2 comics to Antarctic Press, so I'll let y'all know when those come out. I am working on revamping Siru Papers. I'm bringing it back to what it used to be, which was a fictional story. It'll be an online comic. And eventually, once I have enough issues or stories put in there, I'll print off a special edition to go with some Choopy Rules stuff that's going to be coming out that I've got in the works. And then, so instead of a book, I will be doing, as far as serious work, right? That's all going to be fiction and funny and some really cool stories. But I've got I'll be doing the Christian Paranormal Perspective. It'll be its own website, and it'll have articles on all of my thoughts, as well as evidence and links to supporting evidence and all that. That may eventually become a book once I kind of have everything I want down, so that you can have it physically. But it'll be free. I want the information and knowledge to be free, so I am working on that. I'm getting some interviews lined up for that as well. So that's going to be
awesome.
That's probably going to be end of the year when that launches, or maybe even late fall, because I would like to have a lot of material to put up there for that. But Siru Papers is going to be revamped probably by the end of this coming month, and I'll have a couple stories up there to begin with. So,
awesome.
Yeah, lots of work to do.
Yeah,
you're a busy man.
You are very busy. Kind of one of the reasons you kind of put the chill pill on podcasting, because you have other things in the fire, other things in the works that you want to do. Yep. And I know what you did want to do was the Metroplex Monsters. Fantastic book again, everybody. If you have not read it or bought it, again, get the link is posted up top, and I'll have your link, Jason, at the end of the show. I'll put it in the video or the live show, whatever you want to call this. So what spurred you on? What was the motivating factor when you went ahead and wrote this fabulous book about where you live?
So that's a great question, and it's kind of funny. I kind of did it because I wanted to. Yeah. So true story. Okay, it doesn't look like most of them, but History Press, Arcadia Press, same thing. They have these books. Like if you go to like Costco, and there are these little books. They're this size, and it's about an overly specific location near in either the city you're in or the region that you're in. That's them. Right. And so I looked at them one day. I was at HEB, because it's where Texans shop. And
you mean it's not Buc-ee's?
Well, I mean, Buc-ee's is great, but you can't always get milk there. That's all I'm saying. So
I'm not a fan of Buc-ee's, just saying.
Well, I don't want to cut off Jason, but I loved it. But go ahead, Jason.
I'm so disappointed in you, Krista.
I'm sorry. I don't like big chain stores. I want to go in, get my stuff, and get out. I don't want to walk around. I'm not one that likes to shop at all.
Well, that's okay. Well, that's why Aldi exists. That's why all the other places exist. Buc-ee's is to go and be and enjoy. That's the whole point of the Buc-ee's. It's to go. I get it, but I'm just saying, like, I don't always go to HEB. I love Aldi because Aldi is the most efficient store in the history of ever, and I love it. For that reason. But if you go to Buc-ee's, you're going for the experience. You want to hug the beaver. You want to get some brisket, or whatever.
Yeah,
it's an experience. I'm disappointed in you though.
Yeah, well, we passed every Buc-ee's all the way. He never stopped out of one.
Okay, so literally the only time, because we have one down the street now, it's like 20 minutes away. So it has lost its gleam. However, it is where I will stop to use the restroom on long drives because I know it's going to be clean. That's the entire point, right? So I'll forgive you this one time. This one terrible infraction, Krista.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, I'm at HEB.
We're still friends, right?
We're still friends. I'm questioning, but we're still friends. So I'm at HEB, and I see it, and I was thought, they always have these very specific books about the areas and the regions and stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? I wonder if I could do this. So I give them a call, and I'm like, hey, here's my proposition. I'd like to do a book on cryptids in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? And they bit. I was sort of an experiment. They would go on to do other like paranormal, creepy books, which I've done most of the art for. I've done the art for most of those actually. But that's why I did it. It was sort of on a lark, right? And then it was like, oh crap, I need to produce this thing. So yeah, that which started my scramble. I actually took a year off from work. I quit. Now again, it was one of those things that sort of I sent in the proposition before I quit. I was going to quit because the company I was with, I'm an escrow officer for a title company. That's what I do. And the company I was with at the time was making decisions I was really not happy with. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do something that's going to damage my license for this company. So I left, and I helped make ends meet by doing a mobile notary service during the year while I wrote this book and did the research for it. And, sometimes you gotta, unfortunately to do, this is not calling anyone out or anything like that. Please don't take it like this way. Right. But if you want to do a book like this, sometimes you got to go and you got to spend a lot of time talking to people that no one stops to think about, like librarians and historical societies, and seeing what they have on hand. I actually, I gave a book to, I just forgot his name. He has Cliff Brockman, because I was able to find, there was documentation from the Cedar Hill Historical Society that actually continues the story of the Lake Worth monster into that later that fall, right? Everyone's sort of in, when Jim Mars writes his articles, like that seems to be it, right? No, there were other sightings, and the Cedar Hill Historical Society actually had records of them. Nobody knew these things were there. But you go to the libraries, you go and you dig up these books that no one has even looked at in 20 years, right? And some of these historical society books, archaeological detail stuff, and you can find things that has been sitting there the entire time. So, but it takes a lot of time to do it. So that's why it took me about a year. So yeah, that was why I just wanted to do it and see if I could and get that opportunity to have a little fun, sort of, knock the old archaeological cobwebs off and, do some actual research. So here we are.
Awesome.
Here we are indeed. And, you and I for a couple of years, we did a lot of shows together, and I know what your beliefs are on a lot of different subject matter.
Yeah.
And the one, and when you talk about the book, Metroplex Monsters, found on Amazon, Jason McLean, there you have it. I got to tell you, you're the first person that I ever spoke with since I had been doing cryptids. And you hear about the cryptid, Dogman, Bigfoot, Mothman, and then you hear about these peculiar. Can't say peculiar.
You're so close. You're so close.
I almost got it out. There's like that. I didn't like Frogman. But then you got in this book. And it's outlined quite more than once in this book about Goat Man. I'm like, Goat Man, you got to be kidding me, really? I mean, why don't we just take every animal out there, every manimal, and just put a man after it?
You can blame Batman for that.
Probably. Thank you, Be Kind, for that awesome super chat.
Thank you, Be Kind.
Yeah, so Goat Man, it's in the book throughout.
Yeah.
What's the thing about goat man that really that you dived into?
So I would actually suggest that Goatman, in this book specifically, what he did for me was he opened my eyes to. Y'all have heard me say this 1,000 times. Folklore is not phenomena, right?
Mm-hmm.
That started with the research for this book, and one of the reasons for it is everyone's heard about the Goatman at Old Alton Bridge or the Goatman at White Rock Lake, right? When it comes to North Texas. But the thing is, we have so many other goat men legends. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And when I had them all sort of together in one area, I noticed something. They were using the exact same verbiage and the exact same patterns of what the goat man of that particular region is supposed to do and be, right? And I realized that can't possibly be a coincidence because I had just realized it was all of the things Jim Mars wrote about when he was writing about the Lake Worth monster when that all happens back in '69, particularly the first 2 days worth of reporting. And that's when I realized something. So we have accounts of what is clearly a Bigfoot going back to the 1800s, not just in Texas, but in the Dallas-Fort Worth area specifically, right? And it's always called like the monster or the creature. In fact, there's an early account from the 30s of people seeing what we would call a Bigfoot here in Waxahachie, where I live now. I actually think I found the location because of the description that's given of where they're at. And again, association with the creeks and the rivers. These are very, very old Bigfoot legends, but the name Bigfoot doesn't exist until the 60s anyway, right? So that's why the names are all different. And then what happens with the Lake Worth Monster event? Jim Mars publishes his articles in which they're called the Goat Man, right? And so what happens is it's such a big event and it's so profound in the area that essentially that name gets superimposed upon every weird place. Now, Cedar Hill, right, has a Goat Man, and again, as I just pointed out, we have 2 different accounts coming out of that area that fall. Clearly, these people saw either the same Bigfoot or a member of that troop in Cedar Hill. Okay, wow. Which is quite a distance from Fort Worth, but really not that far away. If you realize that they're traveling again, they're using the creeks and the rivers to travel, and I detail that in the book. But what happens is that all these places where a Bigfoot had been spotted, it gets renamed Goat Man. And then so that name gets labeled on these regions, right, that have already some pre-existing mythology. Cedar Hill is literally where this is all happening is called Witch Mountain. It's the highest point in North Texas. Old Alton Bridge already had some, and again, Witch Mountain had its own lore, which I discussed. But again, all urban legends very familiar. Old Alton Bridge, same thing. That's the hanging man mythology that we find with every Iron Truss bridge in the world, particularly here in the United States. Old Foamy, not an Iron Truss bridge, but again, it's still a bridge, and you have all the traditional bridge sort of lore, but they just put Goat Man on top of it. All of these places, it's the same thing. The name Goat Man is simply placed on all of these locations, even though it's actually observed there probably doesn't. Oh,
he wasn't invited.
You don't encourage him. Don't encourage this man.
Surprise!
It's been so long since I've seen you, Tex.
I was just thinking the same thing. Wow.
Actually, Tex, I didn't know if you were sleeping.
Well, Krista, I actually missed you, Jason.
It's not what you said on Saturday. Tex likes snuggling.
It's pillow talk. It don't mean nothing.
So yeah, so that's what's going on, right? Is the name Goat Man gets placed sort of as the main sort of name for the Dallas-Fort Worth region because of that event. And so all these locations that already had maybe some pre-existing lore and phenomena just get renamed Goatman. Now, the weird thing is, like at White Rock Lake specifically, people actually see a Goatman. And they have for some time, at least since the 80s. And when people have these similar encounters about a mile or so away from that location, the Goatman seems to look a little less goat-like and more almost alien, you could say, right? The way we think of sort of the Greys, real lanky. But that's the thing, right? It's not that there is a Goatman running around. Is that the name Goatman gets assigned to all of these things in the lore, and they borrow the Lake Worth event, what Jim Mars reports, gets sort of superimposed on all of these locations. So that's what happened with that.
Well, since y'all are just having a little bit of dead air here, I'm going to jump in.
Well, I was going to jump in, Tex, but go ahead. And good to see you, Tex. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Our lines. I'm sorry.
Here we go again.
We did this ad nauseum. Go ahead, Tex. Go ahead.
But I have something. I'm here for a reason. I didn't just come to interrupt and interfere with the show. I'm here for a reason. And Rob recently, if you don't know, Rob recently had a birthday, which was Saturday.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I want to offer, a happy birthday from all of us here, from the blondes and the front porch and the retired one over there. And, but there's something a little more that we've got. And I want to present you with the gift, and I'm going to ship it to you. But we all signed it. I've got to pick up another couple of signatures before I send it, but we've all signed it. Josh signed it. Nellie signed it. Lyle signed it. So, and then everybody on the team. So
it's badass.
But let me get. You know what? I'm going to put myself on solo layout.
I don't know if I want to see this. I don't know if I want to be surprised.
You do. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Tex. Thank you.
So you know what? Let's get Rob up. Let me try this. Hang on a second.
Yeah, that's cool, I guess. Well, no, second.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So because I want to get Rob's reaction, and because this is going to help you with deal with the lions and
yeah, it will. It definitely will.
It will.
So, but this is what we got you.
Oh,
it's a flask.
The Texas-sized flask.
Oh my Lord!
And it holds, Rob. Now hold on. It holds 48 ounces of your favorite beverage.
Very nice.
But you can see it's been signed by almost everybody on the team, and Lyle and Josh Turner and Nellie, and Ryan Edwards signed it.
Yep.
And so yeah, and of course Kristen, the girls, and Jason.
Yep.
Well,
but from all of us, happy birthday, Rob. We love you, brother.
Well, boy, I got to tell you something. First of all, thank you ever so much for that. And signing it, that means a lot to me. Because I got to tell you, I was with my brother and some family for the game, but I got to tell you, I still felt just a little bit alone because all my other great friends were in Texas, so I was just missing that part of you guys, knowing that you're out there. So thank you for that. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Now I will tell you, everybody coming to the Alabama conference, which is in June 7th and 8th, they will be part of a birthday celebration as well. We'll be celebrating Brandy's birthday. We'll be celebrating Anita's birthday. So it's become a yearly thing. We do. So y'all, if you're going to be there, you'll get to hear me sing happy birthday, I guess.
Well, look,
does the full striptease and everything.
Yeah.
Oh,
happy birthday Mr. President.
It's down to the Daisy Dukes, the body glitter.
Yeah.
Pasties are what really sell it for me.
I was going to say,
yeah.
I was just thinking pasties.
Yeah, because I can make them go in opposite directions. So
It's a skill. It's a real skill.
Yes, that's certain. The pasties is a skill that was developed down in Texas, I do believe.
yeah.
The original pasty originated in 1901.
Yeah, no helicopter show though. No, that's not going to happen.
Well, I've got to say that again. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. That is awesome. Thank you so much for that. I really love all you guys, and thanks for everybody in chat for the birthday wishes as well.
Well, it's also going to be Catherine Gay's husband's birthday, and they're coming to the conference.
There you go. It's going. This is going to be a party.
Mm-hmm. I think so. We're going to need a bigger room. To quote, Captain Brody, we're going to need a bigger boat. We need a bigger room for this get together.
Yep,
it's true.
It's going to be a fun one.
So, well, thank you, Tex. Now, again, I thank you very much. And it kind of threw me off my what Jason had said now, so I lost my train of thought on that one.
You've derailed the groove, man.
Yeah, but no, it's well worth being
sorry,
derailed.
But you've interrupted the Emperor's groove.
It's well worth it when, my friends, wish me happy birthday, show me an awesome gift. And again, the people in chat are all stepping up and saying happy birthday. So that Lions loss is now forever in the past. We move on. We move forward.
And we got you something to help you do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I
don't know. I'm just saying, if that was given to me, I wouldn't use it. I would put it up somewhere.
No, I probably won't. I'm not a big whiskey totaler, but it's definitely going. I got a place for it. I'll probably break it in. I'll probably bring it with me to Alabama. There we go. When I'm up there doing my presentation,
to get autographs on if you wanted, So.
Yeah, another great idea.
There you go.
Great idea.
You'd be like Willie Nelson's guitar.
Yeah, there you go.
You haven't seen our banner either. It'll be looking like that. We're running out of room on our banner for signatures.
Yeah. Well, thanks, dude. Yeah, well, thanks everybody. I really appreciate that.
Yep.
It's awesome. Thanks, Tex, Jason, Krista, Brandy, all the rest of you. I'll be able to say hi to you guys. Yep. Thanks. Appreciate it. I'm just a guy behind the mic.
You're more than that. You're a guy with a bandana behind a mic.
Yeah.
Never sell yourself short like that, Rob. Never.
Okay, I won't.
You're our own little pirate, and we love you.
Yeah.
Yes, you can become a BMR pirate today if you hit the join button. Nice segue into that little marketing ploy.
I'm a pirate.
Yes, you are. I got about 41 pirates, so that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Well, Krista, that little DVD duplication thing you have in the back, I don't think really counts.
Well, Tex, you're more than welcome to join us. It kind of reminds me of the big three way back in the day when it was BMR, Jason, and Tex going at it during the early days, and we got Jason kind of, I guess, half the outside of retirement here today. Thank you. Tex joining. We got a new BMR pirate / porcher.
Yep. He's a porch pirate.
So,
I am a porch pirate.
So you know what? Thanks for that, Tex. So you know what I'm going to do, Jason? Since my train of thought was thrown off, I'm going to thumb through this book, and I'm going to roll through this book, and whatever chapter I land on, I'm going to have you bring out and talk about, and I'm sure you'll remember. And It's funny though. I wrote 50 stories for my book, and I can only remember half a dozen of them. Isn't that wild? With all the editing which you help with, isn't that crazy?
There is stuff. Hey, sometimes you got to flip through. Like, wait, what did I write there?
Yeah,
like,
did I say this before?
When did this book actually come out? I keep forgetting. Hold on. I think because I wrote it like a year. Like, I think it took almost a year to come out.
Yeah.
Which book? That you're new?
No, Jason's old one. I told Jason beginning of the show he don't market his books enough, so we're doing a special show on this book.
So this book is 4 years old now.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. That came out right after I met you.
Yeah, exactly. It just come out. So I wrote this thing basically in 2019.
Woohoo! Thank you, Donnie.
Thanks, Donnie.
Thank you,
Cares
Donnie.
about go.
And by the way,
Well-
I don't know if you've seen the comment, Jason, but Glenn says, I really miss Jason McLean questions everything.
I do too. That was just a
Man,
that was
I'll
cutting
tell
edge.
you,
That was
I
cutting
think-
edge stuff, man. Cutting edge.
I think we ought to start a petition to bring him out of retirement.
Yeah.
I would like to go into retirement first before that happens.
Well,
I gotta actually get retired before y'all do that.
Well, here, yeah. But before we get on with this, when I randomly go through this, before it eludes me, thanks to Be Kind, Catherine Gay, Pancho Zorsch, Michelle Delaney, Texas Front Porch twice for the memberships, and Donnie Show for your awesome super chats and texts for the memberships that you gave out 5 and you became one. So thanks to everybody. I do appreciate it a whole bunch, and I sincerely do mean that.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get too derailed here, and I shed a tear. Thumbing through it. Here we go. Where are we going to stop?
John
All right,
Kettley.
Jason. Oh, wow. Right on a chapter. How lucky was that? Jason, you're going to have to put on your thinking cap. It's in the middle of the book.
Okay.
The Mountain Creek Monster, Bigfoot at Grand Prairie, and the best Southwest cities.
Okay. So in many ways, this actually continues the theme of the sort of like how did the name Goatman become such a popular thing in around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, right? Because again, you have Jim Mars writes that name in his column or in his articles with like what monster meant. Well, again, now that becomes a popularized name instead of it being the creature and the monster and whatever local sort of regionalized name that they had been using since the 1800s. Everyone now calls him Goatman. Well, the reason at first is that people had seen the Bigfoot around those creeks for, again, forever, since the 1800s. They'd heard them, they'd seen them. And what I do in the book is I literally show through a bunch of different sightings, more recent sightings, outside of the two, like they mentioned in Cedar Hill, right? The 2 encounters in Cedar Hill in the 60s, which actually literally shows the migration pattern. There are several accounts of these, of Bigfoot in the Mountain Creek area. So probably to take a quick step back for people who are unfamiliar with the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The Trinity River is the reason life in North Texas happens at all, because that's where all the water is. And there are 4 major forks for the Trinity River, and they all sort of join in around South Dallas. Obviously, Lake Worth is over in Fort Worth, and it goes all the way down. Well, Mountain Creek is one of the larger tributaries off of the Trinity River. It goes right down through Grand Prairie, and it's such a major tributary that we were able to dam it up to create Joe Pool Lake. And what we have are several accounts of that of Bigfoot in more recent times being seen, one of them in broad daylight, right there at where the Trinity River and the Mountain Creek meet, literally just drinking water in broad daylight. And there's several others where it's in the backyard. And again, Cedar Hill, where Witch Mountain is, you can see Joe Pool Lake from there. That's how close, like the Mountain Creek runs right there. So what they're doing is they're starting in Fort Worth. They were, at least at the time, using that area to migrate through. They would go down south, probably use Mountain Creek to avoid actual proper South Dallas, go down around, and then they would use things like the 10 Mile Creek to make it over to the other side of the Trinity and out into East Texas, probably using other tributaries as well for that region. Obviously, we don't know how far they migrate or wander. We don't really have that answer, so that's all speculation. But what we do know is that we have these accounts that seem to follow a very specific pattern. Again, 10 Mile Creek has its, not only do I have an account of someone who lives right off the creek having one of these creatures look over the fence at her child, there's a long-standing account of what's called the Hinky Man, which, the Hinky Man, and when you listen to the story, it sounds preposterous until you realize, okay, because there's a large Czechoslovakian population in South Texas, or in South Dallas, but then also down to West, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like him.
That is a real live goat man, folks.
Real live goat man. Real live.
There
goat
it
man.
is, the one and only goat man.
Yep, he ate all of my. He ate all of our cans too. It was terrible. True story.
Okay, so maybe I am here to interfere with the show a little bit.
We would not have it any
right,
other way.
That's fine. It's the last show of the month.
Yeah. So what was that? Okay, yeah, Czechoslovakian. So for Eastern Europeans, right, they have the tradition of Krampus, right? I think Krampus is sort of made. Everyone's a little bit more aware of Krampus now. You know, he's Santa's helper, but he punishes the children by taking them and putting them in a sack, right? Well, he's basically described as a satyr. That's essentially what he is. So what they've done is they've taken these accounts that have, again, been there since the 1800s, and they've laid that mythology on top of him and made the Hinky Man. The Hinky Man is this guy with a limp and this deep fur coat, and he walks around 10 Mile Creek, and if you're down there smoking or whatever, he'll come and he'll kidnap you and take you away. So it's one of those things where it seems preposterous until you start realizing how folklore works. And what they've done is they've taken this account of Bigfoot, which we know we've had sightings. People hear him or have heard big feet, Sasquatch eye, wandering and making calls up and down the area. And they've taken that and they've taken their own native stories and superimposed that on that to create this new idea of the Hinky Man. But yeah, essentially what we have is proof that they were migrating from Fort Worth using the Trinity River and then Mountain Creek to bypass, South Dallas, where there's a lot more interaction with humans, in order to avoid detection. But that's how they're moving from, essentially Fort Worth out to a more eastern Piney Woods area out in East Texas. Oh. And again, lots of accounts. Cedar Hill, 2 accounts right there at the end of that same summer where we have the Lake Worth Monster event. So really interesting.
It is interesting. What is interesting, what you brought up too, because Texas here, we talk about it a couple of times. He's typically with me on shows until his recent work schedule. I always bring out when I've talked to like some folklorists like Dennis Carroll. In fact, we did a segment on Krampus and a couple other ones like Farla Ventura was on. I just recently he had another young lady on the other day, but we're talking about folklore, and I always bring this up to these novelists. They're into folklore. There is some hidden element of truth behind all folklore. Don't you? Yes. Would you agree or not agree? So
it's folklore. I think the better way to define folklore, because it's the folk of the people, or folk of the people. It's the lore of the folk, right? It's what it is. It is the stories that arise from real encounters, but it's the stories created by a culture to understand and sort of try and figure out what's happening where they are. But it often builds off of, again, older folklore, Krampus, the hanging man mythologies, which you could argue have roots all the way back to Greece, right? Every time you come to one of these, to a covered bridge or whatever, any haunted bridge, what do? You flash your car lights 3 times, you honk 3 times, you get out of the car and knock on the covered bridge 3 times, right? Something along those lines. That's happening. That goes all the way back to ancient Greece. When you come to a river, you are supposed to make certain proclamations 3 times, so as not to disturb the spirits of the water. These are very older traditions, but what folklore is a culture trying to wrestle with this phenomena, but then also at the same time imparting morality at the same time. Often the taboos of a culture are expressed as, this is what this evil creature will do, right? And so that's their way of expressing the taboo of that culture. Again, going back to Goatman, Old Alton Bridge is a great example of that, because it's clearly starting off as a traditional hanging man story, which is a man does something bad. He's a criminal of some kind, usually murder, commits some heinous act, and he's hanged from the bridge. Now, where the Goatman thing sort of starts off is he loses the head, right? His head pops off, and then the body, the now angry ghost, goes off and finds a goat, rips its head off, replaces it with his head, replaces the goat head for his, and now haunts the area. Right? That's sort of the original version of this story, and we have very, very similar stories going as far back with these truss bridges for a long time. But in the 60s is where the more modern version comes out, and this is during the period of civil rights. And so, what does the Old Alton Bridge? Right? Sorry, what?
Psychedelic drugs.
Well, that too. Well, but the main story now becomes that the Goatman was a black goat farmer who was on the outskirts of town because of prejudice in the 18, and then what happens? The Ku Klux Klan comes because he's become so successful. They come, they murder his wife and family, and then they hang him from the bridge. And so the story changes from being this murderous guy to now he's a wronged black man, and look at who the villains are. That is a culture that has changed from saying children don't go by this bridge at night. That's where it starts off, right? Because you may encounter the Goatman, and by the way, it's evil to do bad things to people. And now it's become we've switched him up, so now he's the victim. Again, you still have the don't go there after dark because you don't want to run across him, but also look at who the evil people are now, right? It's now the Ku Klux Klan. Mm-hmm. And so folklore is both a culture from their perspective and their understanding of the universe, they build off of earlier stories that their culture has engaged in. And so they're trying to wrap their brains around this phenomena and interpret it from that perspective. But then they're also using those stories to convey messages about morality or safety. Italy, right? The Italy Goatman. Also another iron truss bridge. That story is tragic. It's about a kid who accidentally left the goat pen open, and he's running around trying to find the goats that have gotten out, and he gets hit by the train and killed. Now, while there's zero evidence that anything like the Old Alton Bridge event, regardless of the version of the story, occurred, while we don't know if there was a very specific child who died in Italy, Texas, there were plenty of people, including children, who were hit by trains during the 1800 period because they would use the train tracks as a point of navigation. Very, very, understandable thing to do, because we have to remember there aren't a lot of roads at this time. It's the 1800s. And so it became a very easily defined landmark that you could use to move north, south, or whatever direction that the local train track was. So people did get hit a lot, actually. Very, very sad. So that story now becomes a child. So the story for that region becomes a child who's been hit. As a moral story, where the moral of the story is to tell children, don't play on the train tracks. Are they trying to scare them by saying, hey, you may run across the Goatman? Yes. But is there also you don't want to get hit by a train? That's also there, which was a real legit problem people were having in that time frame. So yes, so to your question, is folklore based on reality? Yes and no, right? Mm-hmm. There's a bit of both. There's usually some degree of phenomena that is happening, that people are interacting with, that they're trying to understand and deal with. But this is why I say folklore is not phenomena, because that culture, though, is trying to understand it from its own perspective, what it's heard, from generations past, cultures past. Again, the Czechoslovakians, create the Hinky Man based on Krampus. You have these, stories from the Scots in the area, right? They're going to have a very different look on these things. So the Germanic peoples, when they were further south, that's when you start getting things like Donkey Woman, right? They're bringing those native stories, and they're reinterpreting them for this new era. But they're also trying to impart wisdom of some kind. What's good? What's bad? It's not a coincidence that when you have the evil creatures, right? Look at what they do. Those are usually pretty big cultural taboos that are being associated with those creatures, as a way of conveying what is good and what is bad.
Wow.
Well, I got a follow up to that, but we're coming really quick on 52 minutes. What I'm going to do is we'll roll through that unless you guys want to take a 5-minute. I can roll through to the 10 second. We got 70 plus people here sitting in chat. So I'm going to do Randy. I'm doing the 10 second. And with that 10 second, don't forget, everybody, please subscribe to Texas Front Porch on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob Found on YouTube, and all our other great people that we got. You got Diva Dimensions coming up, Tinfoil with Brandy and Randy. That's all found in the About sections. I just wanted to keep this rolling a little bit. And again, before we roll on, I want to thank everybody. Donnie Cho, Tex twice, Michelle, Poncho, Catherine, Be Kind, and I think that's it. Michelle Delaney. Thanks for DJ Tyler. Thank you for coming on in and your super chats and support. So I got to actually change my contact, but I got to ask you something really quick, Jason. We talk about these bridges. It seems to me like a lot of mysterious things happen around bridges.
Yes.
And, a lot with this goat man entity or cryptid, however you want to frame it. What do you think about the Mothman? This harbinger of things that happen, always hanging out back in West. It was Pleasant Ridge, hanging out. Was a harbinger of what had happened, and the bridge collapsed. Point Pleasant, yep. And I always get that confused. We have a Mount Pleasant where I live, but any of this related, you think, or just coincidence?
I'm not a big fan of coincidence in general.
I know. I know that, but neither am I.
Well, it's what did Einstein say? Coincidence is how God runs the world, runs the universe without taking credit.
Right.
So we actually did a show last year, 2 years ago, I think, you and me together. I think Tex was on it too. We talked about the sirens, right? Yeah. Of Greek mythology. We think of them as mermaids now, but originally they were sort of birds, like harpies. Also, we have a similar thing in this book. I saw Glenn likes female, women cryptids. We can talk about that in a little bit. But they were originally more bird-like. But the thing about a siren is their cries would lure men to their deaths, right? In the ships, on the seas. And of course, everyone's tried to find some way to rationalize this. But when we were talking, one of the things that occurred to me is, I think to all of us, is there's a lot of similarity between a siren and a banshee of Celtic lore. And the thing that really sort of stood out is cause and effect. The Greeks said, they were singing, which caused the wreck, but a banshee sings because the death is going to occur, right? Sort of a chicken and the egg question. What if they're describing the same phenomena? A spirit being that the sirens are actually not calling to men to lure them to their deaths. They are going to die, which is why they are calling out, just like a banshee would. We see similarities across a few cultures that if you sort of I think one of the big things we make a mistake in is we're saying, well, it can't be this because this folklore says this and this folklore says that. It's like, well, hold on. If a folklore is simply people wrestling with a phenomena from their cultural perspectives, it's not the phenomena itself, then maybe take that step back and say, well, what are the overlapping features, right? It does appear that there are harbingers of doom and destruction, and the Mothman sort of fits that description. In fact, very similarly, he fits the description of the original version of like the siren. There's no accounts of him, calling or wailing before the death, but that's almost irrelevant. He's there before the doom occurs. We have a lot of accounts coming out of Chicago. Well, Chicago's a friggin' war zone at this point, right? It's not uncommon to have these weird, sort of odd shaped spirits seen in areas before something bad occurs. So I think it's very likely that something like Mothman, it's not that it's a harbinger, but it's part of a much older tradition of things that appear before calamity occurs, either as a portend or perhaps it's a manifestation of an angel of death, or I mean, who knows what it is. Anything we would try to rationalize it as is nothing more than us reasoning it away. There's no real. It's all speculation at that point. But Mothman has enough similarities with these figures that I think it would be correct to assign them in that field, right? Of a spirit that is a harbinger of doom, like the sirens or the banshee.
You know, I got to fix my contact, but I can't leave before I bring this up because what you just brought up. Barry and I did a show last Thursday with Barry on the brunch show.
Yeah.
And he always wanted to get on and talk about my Bigfoot encounter that I had. And you guys know I hate talking about mine all the time, but it comes up, it resonates.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the banshee. And one of Barry's theories, and a couple of things that you said about the harbinger, the yell, the scream, that shrill, and then something happens like a death.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of put that and surmised it as he thought that perhaps what I saw maybe wasn't a Bigfoot at all, maybe a form of a banshee, because guess what happened? It got the yell, the scream. It was unusual, and I guess there was a death that happened 2 months later.
Yeah.
So I thought that's the first theory I ever heard about what happened to me. And again, there's so many theories. That's why we do these shows. And that was, as Barry would say, that was kind of food for thought. And I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting observation. I don't think it should be discredited at all. Because, and here's the thing: what is one of the thoughts that we've had for a long time is that, sure, I think there's enough reason to believe that there is a physical creature running around that we could call Bigfoot, right? A very, very small population of a physical creature. However, that maybe as much as 90% of the other encounters that people ascribe to Bigfoot isn't actually Bigfoot. Now, is it because it's appearing as a Bigfoot? Is it trying to hide itself? Is it taking a form that we would be familiar with? Or are we simply misunderstanding what we're looking at? No one knows. And again, this is not saying that all Bigfoot encounters aren't supernatural. They could be, right? But it's one of those things where right now we have a preponderance of physical evidence that suggests that there is a physical nature to it. So until that we have a reason to discredit that or to interpret that data differently, we have to at least put that there. But then perhaps we have this other stuff. So maybe what you saw wasn't a Bigfoot per se, but that it was the form that it took. I mean, again, when we first started talking about this, you talked about how its face turned into that of a demon. That's not uncommon with these sort of banshee stories. Banshees would follow families, and they would appear again. They appear as females, but oftentimes they were beautiful until sometimes they became hags, right? So what your encounter would not necessarily fall outside the realm of familiarity in with that tradition.
Hey, you had a question real quick before we get too far into it on the same thing.
Is it for Jason?
Yes, for Jason. It says it's from JoJo. Would the Jersey Devil fall into this category too?
Okay. So I gotta fix my contact. Continue on.
Yeah. You fix that. So okay. Jersey Devil is really, really interesting because again, this whole idea of what folklore is, right? It is it's people dealing with a phenomenon. It's not the phenomenon itself. The Jersey Devil, there's a lot of folklore that's going up around it, but what really prompted the mythology is an event that took place during the daylight hours, right? In New Jersey, the creature appeared and was seen by dozens of people. in broad daylight. What happened is they described this creature. An artist in Philadelphia took the accounts literally, not seriously, and drew the weird creature that we know today, right? The deer head and the bat wings and all of that. The thing about that is, we need to remember, during the time when this happens, dinosaurs are not well known. They hadn't made that cultural impact. We hadn't really been trying to reconstruct them, and from the way we can now. If you look at the description of the actual descriptions that are given, not the drawing made by the artist who had nothing to do with the situation and was not taking it seriously, they are describing, I would suggest, a rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur. The Rhamphorhynchus specifically, that's sort of where the whole family of pterosaurs gets their name. These are the pterosaurs that have they tend to be smaller than, say, a pteranodon, right? But they have long tails with these flanges on the end. That's literally where dragons get the dragon tail idea comes from. So people see this thing, and the drawing gets published in Philadelphia, and of course that image gets spread all over the place. So that's now in people's heads, is that drawing. And so now, again, probably this essentially the same thing happens as what happened here in North Texas. This is now the Jersey Devil. The name then gets thrown on everything, right? Hey, Ryan. And yes, I did. He's also my favorite. He's also my favorite Toho monster. Don't get me wrong, love me some G, love me some Big G, but I love Rodan for obvious reasons. But so now every creepy thing, every paranormal thing now becomes the Jersey Devil. And now we have all this other mythology that then gets roped into it. Donnie actually pointed out, I think, or at least he was the first one who brought it up, the family that supposedly is the family that the Jersey Devil comes out of, right? They had this beef with Benjamin Franklin. So essentially, Ben Franklin and them, they had this beef going back and forth over their almanacs, and so he was writing about how they're occultists and they're evil and like all this stuff. Like it was some old school modern trolling, right? That's how this fight kind of happened. So people then take this event, right? Then they take the name Jersey Devil, they take the drawing that is done in Philadelphia, they sort of mash it all together, and they're like, well, who can we blame this on? We have this tradition of hating these people because of the fight with Ben Franklin and the stuff he put out. That's how that evolves. So again, was there a real Jersey Devil event? Yes. Were there cryptids that probably was there a cryptid that caused the sighting and yes. But the story that we now have is not really what that's about. It's about, again, that culture sort of negotiating that event.
No, I get what you're saying. You had another question in there too. Let me find it. It was a little while back. And he asked, why do the bridge creatures tend to involve a carnival accident?
That's a great question. So here's the thing. A lot of these bridges don't. So, okay. A lot of them don't really require carnival accidents, but these things do happen later. There was a period of these traveling circuses and carnivals on train tracks. So there would be wrecks and animals would be released, right? The problem is it didn't happen nearly as often as everyone needs. But the thing is, those accounts are used to explain cryptozoological sightings for years. I mean, literally for 100 years. Every ape man is just an escaped gorilla. Every sighting of a black panther is an escaped zoo animal. Like it's the go-to excuse to wipe the story out, right? Charles Fort called it the wipe. He said the guy who basically created cryptozoology, him and Bernard Hulvemans, and then of course you have Ivan T. Sanderson. But Charles Fort pointed out that at first you have an account that is taken seriously in the newspaper. Then a few days later, there's maybe one or two more articles, but then there's an excuse that's used to wipe the story off the page.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever there's a cryptozoological animal used, it becomes an escaped zoo animal, right?
Well,
And so
basically, it's the same thing. It's the same thing we're seeing with bear attacks, big tack of cats,
yeah,
big cat attacks, that type of thing right now.
Yeah, same thing. And so in the same way, those accounts get tied into lore as a way of, again, just as anything happens, right? As any story grows and changes, essentially that element gets added in later as a way maybe of creating some explanation for this event.
Right. Well,
we're all sitting here trying to talk. Jason is out of retirement, but but more importantly, talking about his book, Metroplex Monsters. That's right. You can find the link pinned up top next to my book, of course, because Jason's name is right next to it. Click on Jason's name on that link, and you can find all his books on Amazon.
Glenn Dennison, he says something here. The Hopkinsville goblins or aliens were said to be escaped monkeys. I've heard that before too.
Yeah. Although I would point out, because they clearly weren't escaped monkeys, right? Those were always, the early accounts of aliens, all of them look like either goblins or something out of a sci-fi movie from the 50s. We don't get the traditional grays until much later and really it's the Betty and Barney Hill story. Although their initial stories, they don't look like grays. That doesn't evolve until much, much later, after War of the Worlds. And so it's sort of one of those pieces of the puzzle that Dean, I, and others will point to and say, look, even the modern UFO phenomena, again, excluding the stuff the government's doing, because they are absolutely messing with the community directly on this, and they use the UFO phenomena to cover up a lot of stuff that they do. But for the real stuff, this really just appears to be a reinterpretation of encounters that we've had forever, a phenomena that has always occurred. It's simply renegotiating itself to fit our assumptions about the world around us. Right? 1,000 years ago, they were fae, they were goblins, they were trolls. Now, they're aliens. Because why? Well, we're scientific now. Look, we have smartphones and everything. We're smart people now. Because we worship science. And so this is how it's coming to us. Now they're cyborgs from another planet or another plane of existence. And now they're interdimensional or they're quantum, because those are the buzzwords and the sci-fi words that we want to use to make it appear more scientific, because that's what makes us feel better. Whereas 1,000 years ago, it was all spiritual. And they were spirits and they were supernatural and they were part of this otherworldly thing that's always been here. And in many ways, a lot of this phenomena, it's all the same phenomena. There's a lot of overlap, and there are very specific things that sort of overlap. And you can say, okay, that's a faceless ghosts. Every culture has a version of it. It's negotiated and talked about differently depending on the culture that you're in, but they're clearly describing the same thing. In fact, on Ryan,
Like Lady of the Lake.
Like ladies, yeah, exactly. Like ladies of the lake, things like that. Even Goatman to a point. Ryan was on with I was on with Brandy, I think, for one of the Blondes and Booze episodes when Christy was out of town. That's one of the things we talked about is if you look at the original lore of the Wendigo, not the modern stuff where it's the skeletal, with deer head with antlers, and the actual story of the Wendigo and several others, it's almost identical to the original version of the werewolf story of Eastern Europe from just 500 years ago, right? Originally, they didn't transform into wolves. They were either taken over by a wolf spirit or they had a magic wolf belt that would give them superhuman strength, but they would go and they would murder people. And usually they had committed some great cultural taboo, and cannibalism is a huge part of that story. They're virtually identical. Right.
I have to wonder if that came from. You have to wonder about the whole serial killer thing.
Yeah.
When you start talking about that, because
it does. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, cannibalism, child killing. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Brandy actually sort of brought this up as well. She said, when she was talking to Ryan, she said it feels like the Wendigo spirit would have a lot of takers right now, considering all the cultural taboos that are being broken. I just kind of stopped her. I'm like, well, hold on. To Tex's point, how many of these serial killers sort of come out of nowhere, and the evil things that they do are just a 1-to-1 of the Eastern European werewolf or the native, the First Nations Wendigos and any other. I mean, there's so many of these names that are cultural, and again, they're cultural interpretations of the same theme.
Well, look at what they call them. You got
Yeah.
the werewolf of Wisteria. You got
Yeah.
the beast of Baston. You've got
Yes,
the
exactly.
vampire of Brooklyn. The list goes on. The Seattle vampire. I mean,
Yeah, it's not a
we're not that far off, folks. We really
Yeah.
not.
Mhm. Well,
Go ahead, Crystal. You haven't said too much.
no, go ahead. You're good.
No.
Go on.
Vampires, Jason.
Mhm.
Now, that's total folklore. We talked earlier about that. We come up with and you can make, you see some of these findings about these skeletons, stakes through the heart. They've got balls in the mouth, holding them open.
Some people
I don't
pay
think.
for it.
Pardon me? Yeah.
What?
Nothing. I caught it.
I knew you would.
Me personally, does a actual vampire exist? I'll tell you what, and Tex knows I always say I believe in everything. I will say I don't think an actual vampire that sucked blood and turned you into the undead really exists. Does it? I don't know. I haven't been to New Orleans. However, but when they have these archaeologists find these things, wasn't that more about a dead corpse and they thought that it was a bloodsucker? And so they staked them because, when they woke up in their crypts, there was blood coming out of the mouth. I mean, what's your take on that whole thing? Because if you were just a novice and you were looking at these stories, these shows on YouTube or on Discovery,
Right,
it kind of looks like vampire skeletons with the teeth and everything. But that's just a matter of decomposition, probably, or the belief in vampires during that cultural time, right? And so today it's probably warded off as just pure folklore, imagination.
Yeah. So, okay, there's a lot there. One thing I think we need to sort of state from the beginning is a lot of how we consider what we think a vampire is today is literally created by Bram Stoker, right? There were don't get me wrong, there were other people who were writing about sort of the gentleman aristocrat vampire before him, but he's really the one who takes a lot of these ideas and popularizes them. So when we say vampire today, we are virtually universally describing what Bram Stoker wrote, not what is traditionally understood to be, a vampire or a strigoi. So that's sort of the first thing we kind of need to do is get a lot of those ideas out of the way.
Right.
But back to your point, one of the things, again, I have a problem with archaeology because, again, that's what I was going to do. And I saw how much of it is a scam. In fact, I literally, okay. Randy and I pulled a little swerve on Donnie a few weeks back when we were supposed to have our big debate, right? And we're supposed to, it was the hell in the cell kind of thing that was going to go on. We agreed with everything, and he was like, this is one of the things we talked about, was a lot of people say the science. Here's the problem. Science doesn't tell you anything. Scientists tell you something. And far more important than the data itself are the preconceived notions that a scientist brings to the data. Okay? When we look at these bodies that we find that have been disinterred, they've had bricks put in their mouths, the head has been put at the feet, they have iron stakes that are running through, rods running through the body into the ground. The explanation that is given is predicated on the idea that the people living at that time did not understand what happened to human bodies when they decayed. Okay. A lot of this comes out of the assumption that people back then were stupid. That is the preconceived bias that is brought to all of this phenomena by archaeologists and even cryptozoologists, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that big complaint I have about calling living pterosaurs and even pterosaurs thunderbirds? I'm like, you are presupposing that First Nations people saw these creatures and based their religion on encounters with these things, instead of saying, well, hold on, what if you're presupposing that idea? Because there's a bias of, well, they just didn't know what they were dealing with, and so they made them supernatural things. Now, there's instances of that idea occurring all throughout history, so it's not necessarily unfounded, but it's still a bias, right? That we are laying on that mythology and on those religious thoughts. In the same way, when we see these disinterred bodies, there's the explanation that is given by modern archaeologists and historians is predicated on the idea that these archaeologists and historians are bringing to the idea that they're all stupid people. They had no idea what was going on. I would suggest, now, I'm not saying these people actually were vampires, right? Or the body was coming. But the thing is, if you go back and look at a lot of these older stories, the body was not leaving the grave. It was a spirit. And so their hope was by disrupting the body that the spirit would be trapped in the body. That was the idea. So again, we sort of have these ideas brought on because of our preconceived notion. And maybe some of that was occurring, right? Because we had plagues, we had these diseases that they didn't have any way of fighting. And of course, you have a person who dies in the traditional stories. That person who dies, who becomes the vampire, the first people he kills are his family. Well, that's not hard to imagine. Someone dies of a disease. Who's the next one to most likely get infected? The family members that cared for him, and then the family members that are caring for those family members, right? So you can kind of see how that develops from that. But people did, and it's documented, see the spirits of individuals that had died. And then they get sick and they die. And that's ascribed to vampirism. So they were trying to, again, the folklore is they were trying to deal with it the only way they knew how. And so the Strigoi or the vampire idea comes out of that. In many ways, a zombie is the same thing. We often, again, when we think of a zombie or a werewolf or a vampire, we think of what we saw from the Universal films, right? We're not actually dealing with the original version of that story. And a lot of the original ideas of what a zombie was the fact that that a human being had two spirits. One sort of like the higher and a lower one, and a zombie was one where the higher spirit, the rational spirit, had gone, but the lower spirit remained trapped in the body. That led to the mischief, right? So
look, we're talking about images and original, stuff like that. I cannot remember the name of the French werewolf that killed so many people.
Yeah.
Look at the images of that that came back from the day.
Wait, are you talking about the Beast of Gévaudan, or are you talking about the other one? Yeah.
Look at the images from that from back in that era. They didn't. It wasn't a wolf. It was a man.
Yeah, there's a story where it grabbed one of its victims. They fought it off. So it's like, well, hold on. Wolves don't have hands, right? Yeah, and so there's a lot there, which goes back to we're all humans trying to deal with this phenomena that is, and we're doing it with our worldview, our preconceived notions. Right, as I mentioned before, UFOs in many ways, this is just a renegotiation of this phenomena that's been here forever, but we're just trying to renegotiate it with our modern thoughts and modern theologies, which is we're scientists now. We like people in white lab coats to tell us what reality looks like, even though they can't prove a damn thing. Right? Again, I'm not anti-science, but I am, however, someone who likes to point out, look, we don't necessarily know all the things we think we know sometimes.
Right.
A lot of times things are just, we listen to the people in the white lab coats the same way 1,000 years ago, people listened to the people in the black robes. It's the same thing. And we are negotiating this phenomena from a cultural perspective.
Right.
And that's the number one issue here is we don't want it to offend our modern scientific sensibilities. So we try and come up with another version or another interpretation of the data so that it appeals to our sensibilities. It doesn't mean that it's actually right. It just means that it doesn't offend our desire for reality to fit in a test tube.
Right. Go ahead, Krista. I know you wanted to say something.
Well, Jason has a couple questions.
Yeah, what I was going to do was, I noticed that Krista is starring some questions, which we'll get to. Before we get to that, there's one more thing in your book, Jason, I did want you to speak on, and it's not quite cryptid, but it's about the Dallas demon, the demon of Dallas, the Dallas demons in your book. We've been talking about, we've talked about vampires, cryptids, and spirits. So I guess the Dallas demon will have to make its rounds.
So that actually can apply to a couple different things, right? It real quick for Glenn and his love of female monsters. There's the story of the Lechusa, right?
Yeah, that's in the book.
Which is in the book, which, by the way, if there's one thing that for me is like, well, hey, here's the evidence of something paranormal taking physical form, right? It is that story. Again, if you want the whole story, go to Amazon. Metroplex Monsters, Dallas Demons, Fort Worth Goatmen, and other terrors of the Trinity River.
Very good, Jason. You're getting a little bit better. The link is up top. Of course, it has the link to my book, but Jason's name is forever going to be pinned next to my book, Beyond BMR.
Yes, even if he doesn't want to, it'll be there.
Haunting
him like his own little vampire.
It's part of his retirement package.
Yeah, it is. There you go. Yeah.
So there's the Lechusa, right, which is essentially a giant owl, the size of a human being with the face of a female, of a woman. And of course it haunts this poor girl for a week. There's a big story behind it, but this is my point. This is a clearly paranormal creature that's taking physical form. It is affecting the physical world around her. And it's visible to multiple people at the same time. So that's got to beg some question. What's really happening there? There's a big story. Again, I go into the book. As far as the other demons, which do appear very, very similar in a way, right? Like when I mentioned how when the goat man of White Rock Lake gets a little further away from the lake off the tributaries, it loses the goatness, but retains the backward facing legs. It becomes very thin and gaunt. We see that at Old Alton Bridge, and that's only like half a mile away from the bridge. We see a creature only 5 feet tall or so, but very similar to those features there. We see, again, around White Rock Lake, the creature has this weird look to it that just doesn't, it's very, again, almost alien. Cedar Hill, the chupacabra, the thing I labeled as chupacabra, because I like the alliteration. I'm not going to lie. But there is a dead goat. So, you take it. Sometimes you take advantage. But again, the creature is described as being almost an alien looking creature, weird head, very scrawny body, backwards facing legs. So this form of things that are clearly paranormal taking this form in around these areas, it does appear that the form these entities take almost depends on what either they expect us to think it should look like, or they're trapped within the mythology of the area itself. Because is it reasonable to think that there's a goat man at White Rock Lake, and then on the tributaries it's a completely different thing haunting it?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it more likely that we're having the same type of entities, and that their appearance is almost determined by the mythology of the area? Which does beg questions. Like, again, I think a lot of these things are probably, some of these things are living dinosaurs, right? Like I think probably old One Eye is probably a giant gar or an eel, right? That we described. We've got living pterosaurs, but again, my encounter was in 10 Mile Creek. I can't reject the fact that, hey, isn't that the same thing where we have some other paranormal things? Witch Mountain's right down the road. I can't reject that connection, right? I'd be lying if I did, right? We have the Trinity River Titan, which appears to be some form of mosasaur. Is it possible that all of these that where I'm like, okay, these things seem to be naturally occurring cryptids, like living pterosaur, maybe a living mosasaur, those kinds of things are popping up. What if those are all just manifestations of the same entities? I can't say they're not. I can definitely say that some of these things are clearly paranormal, right? Backwards facing legs, humanoid form, appearing and disappearing at will, being invisible. Yeah, I mean, that's easy to say, but some of these other things, what if it's also taking these other forms? Because that's what I'm expecting to see, right? Or I'm more open to the idea of living dinosaurs. And so it appears as a living dinosaur to me. Someone's more familiar with Bigfoot, so it looks like a Bigfoot to them. I don't know. I don't know that I have an answer for that.
And now that we talked about dinosaurs, I wasn't even bothered to ask anybody about this, but I saw in a video, I don't know what it was on, crossing the road, 3 foot tall. It appeared to look like an actual raptor. Again, it's another thing that I've seen. It's got 1 million views. Is this really a dinosaur? I'm not going to say this was Jason, but I do have to say that I'd have to think that some of these things from 100 million years ago might still be around. I mean, the bird is technically a dinosaur, right?
Yeah. Well, so again, it begs the question of, was it 100 million years ago? Right. We've got soft tissue found regularly in dinosaur bones. Anytime we do carbon-14 testing on coal or diamonds, carbon-14 is found, and that should be gone after 10. Carbon-14 has a half-life of 5,700 years. That means after 10 half-lives, it's essentially gone, and after 20 half-lives, it should be absolutely zero. And yet we have things, which means 50 to 100,000 years, carbon-14 should be entirely gone. And yet we have carbon-14 in coal. We have carbon-14 in these dinosaur bones. We have items and objects and tracks that are in limestone that's supposed to be hundreds of millions of years old, and yet there's hammers and human footprints that are proven to have been that were made when that was still dirt or mud, right? Because we can see the compression layers in CAT scans. It begs, perhaps we're not dealing with. So yeah, I'm very, very open to living dinosaurs for a lot of reasons, but I think the best explanation is they are evidence that this wasn't hundreds of millions of years ago, but rather thousands of years ago that we're talking about. Which is why and I would suggest that a lot of cryptids, the reason they are rejected by science, and the reason science will go out of its way to not look at them, and they will not look at them, no matter what you do, is because it is a disruption of the modern narrative. 100 years ago, people were willing to look at this stuff. Scientists were very open to the idea of living dinosaurs and weird objects found. After about World War I, it shut up real fast, and money didn't go to people who were looking at them. It's amazing how often science agrees with the people who pay them.
Right.
Odd, right?
Just a coincidence.
It's a coincidence. And so that's one of those things where, hey, is it, again, this whole renegotiating data, science doesn't tell you anything. Scientists tell you something. The fact is, it may be that one of the reasons we have all these weird creatures running around is those are the remnants of things that aren't supposed to be here according to the modern worldview. Right? Whether it's paranormal, whether it's cryptid, these are the things that are the monkey wrenches in their worldview, which is why they're not allowed to be spoken of.
Well, it's like one of your favorite sayings, archaeology. If you find the wrong thing, you become a florist.
Exactly.
Which is actually based in something that that happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, archaeologist working. She was about to get tenure, and she found the wrong thing, and now she's a florist. And the people working with her said, "Look, we agree."
Can you tell us what she found without telling us who she was?
Well, I would happily tell you who she was. It's not a sign. I just can't remember her name. Unfortunately, that's all lost to me. It's 20 years ago. But she found artifacts in South America that they used a particular dating method that came back to 50,000 years. And of course, everyone said, hey, there weren't any advanced humans doing advanced human things 50,000 years ago in South America. And so even though the people who did the dating said, yeah, this is right, they all said, nope, she's wrong. So she was left out to dry. And there's tons of stories, fossilized buffalo would clearly have bullet wounds in their heads. The Mexican government's out there forcing everyone to recant at gunpoint, and they don't. There was a paleontologist who found a bolo stone in this stone this stone that he was working on that's supposed to be hundreds of millions of years old, and he calls other paleontologists and other scientists down to watch him. Like, once he realized what he had, he stopped excavating it. It was on like a seawall kind of a thing. He had them come down so they could watch him pull it out. Everyone said he pulled it out of the wall, and it was clearly a bolo stone. This was not some sort of weird rock formation. It was a man-made object. And every one of them said, we don't know how, but he had to have faked it. Why? Because the data told them it was faked? No, but because it ran afoul their worldview. Science tells you nothing. Scientists tell you whatever it is they want to tell you.
It's always, even we talk about recent history, people talk about 100 years, 200 years, whatever. But very, very recent history, our science books that I know me and Rob had in school have been rewritten.
Well, y'all hadn't discovered fire yet, so some things would change.
Go figure. Oh yeah,
You boo.
Ran into that one, Tex. Good old Jason on the show.
Got into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I know that Chris has got some questions lined up for you, Jason. We can refract over to that, or deflect over to that.
Yep. And real quick, thanks, Letitia. She, my grandson has RSV. He was diagnosed this morning. He's 5 months old. So
no,
it's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, that is.
You got my prayers, Krista.
Thank you.
Yeah, same here, Krista.
Appreciate that. All right, Lil Patty says, Jason, your take on the Cornstalk's curse, Mothman legend.
So Cornstalk, I have to admit, I'm not terribly familiar with that one specifically. But again, Mothman, like we've already discussed, I think there's a real reason to think that it's connected to a lot of these older harbinger of doom and death connections, like the Siren or the Banshee, right? I think there's plenty of reason to suggest in the data that they are connected. So again, real phenomena, supernatural phenomena, but that they are, again, harbingers. They are not causes of doom.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not really all that aware of the Cornstalk cause. Cornstalk curse. I blame Tex. I blame him specifically.
You spent too much time with him this weekend, right?
Right. Exactly. Can't be because I didn't get any sleep last night.
All right. Catherine Gay, she asks, has Jason heard of the ghost on Lake Louisville, I think?
So, yeah. So the Lake Louisville ghost, in many ways, is just it's a copy and paste of the White Rock Lake ghost. And even then, the lady in white at the White Rock Lake is another copy and paste legend. Although people, again, it goes back to, but people see her. And there are several potential, again, talking about it in the book, there's several people that she could potentially be, because there were some rather interesting people who did, we know, drown at White Rock Lake. And she would fit the description. So, again, a lot of these seem to be, are they legends that are handed down and then and just retranslated for every situation, kind of a thing, and our perceptions create or allow the spirits to take that form? Or is it just that is how certain, supernatural beings look, right? Is that the form they take? And then we build our legends off of that. So that's a question. I don't, unfortunately, we don't really know which way it is, because we ain't got the Spookatron 5000 patent pending, right?
I'm working on it.
We can objectively observe. That's the problem. Like with me, I'm like, look, if I can put something on once I say it's on that side, it's on the supernatural side of the veil, I'm out because we can't objectively observe it. Everything from that point on is speculation. And well, I think there's a healthy level of speculation that we can do. The problem is once you get beyond what you can show, sort of prove, either historically, it's documented. Once you start moving into that realm of speculation, there's nothing holding you down. And then you're just creating folklore. You're not doing science. It's just, you're just creating folklore at that point. And that's not as useful. I think if we're really trying to understand what this is, that's where it becomes a problem. So, but again, it doesn't mean the phenomenon is not real and that people aren't seeing these things. The question is, we just don't, again, it's chicken or the egg. We don't know which one it is. But we can just say, hey, these elements are clearly lifted from earlier stories or from other accounts where it's sort of copied and pasted over. And we can see that. That's the part we can see. Doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that's how our culture is interpreting the data or is interpreting the phenomena, and we're negotiating that within our cultural context.
Right. I think you got 2 more questions. Brian Barber asked, does Jason think maybe werewolves could be connected to the dogmen?
Yes. So the quick answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is we've done several episodes on that over on Texas Front Porch, and mine. Did we do one on mine? I think we did. Anyway, I just don't remember which one. Whether it was Siri or Jason McLean questions everything.
We've run the full gamut on all the shows. I do.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, this we've addressed it. So here's what I would say. Right.
No, we did a whole series on it. Me and Randy did the month of July. So.
Exactly. So I would say yes.
And everybody, they're free in the archives. Texas Front Porch. And go back.
Subscribe all of them.
You go look at Jason McLean questions everything. We also do a nice series on. Hey, go ahead, Jason.
There you go. So quick answer is yes. Long answer is there is a desire in the community to create the dog man and say it must be different from the werewolf. I would ask why. What's the evidence? Like, there's no reason to separate these ideas at all. Now, again, I am also the one who's going to say the problem is our idea of what most werewolves are comes from Universal Pictures, and not what the actual older lore is. And again, as I mentioned, the older lore does not have them transforming into dogs, right? However, it is very universal and goes back thousands of years. Hellhounds. There is no reason to think that the dogman phenomena isn't some extension of the hellhound mythology or hellhound lore, and that modern werewolf lore is actually influenced by that.
But you do, and what you do have the dog-headed warriors and gods from ancient history. So
yeah, but again, the gods part is unfortunately I don't like to point to that because that feels a little afield. There are dog-headed warriors, but the Cinephali were treated more as humans that just had, like, they wore clothes, right? They had tools, and it's very, very distinct from what we see with the dogman phenomena or lore.
That's because the flood almost wiped them out, and they're not as smart as they were.
This is where I will disagree with Tex. I think the hat's on too tight. But yeah, so short answer is absolutely yes. I do think they are connected. Again, what the connection is, are they the same thing? I don't know. Right? We don't know what that is. But I think to somehow separate the two phenomena, as everyone wants to do, I think that's born out of a desire for it to fit in a more modern scientific worldview. Like, oh, there's a dog man looking thing running around that somehow evolved or whatever. That's really what that's born out of. Instead of saying, hey, how do you know these things aren't people that's transformed into this thing? I've got accounts from people that I know and from people who are known to people that I know, particularly you get into South America, you get a lot of these missionary stories of these shamans shape-shifting. And these people these are people like, I didn't believe in all that, and then all of a sudden I'm up against this voodoo priest and he turns into something. Right. So I'm not opposed to the idea that, yeah, maybe a lot of this stuff is people who are into the dark occult transforming themselves into something, which would make them sort of a werewolf. Again, not a werewolf in the way that Universal Pictures wants us to think a werewolf is, but what a real werewolf is.
Right. Makes sense. Looks like this next question is for BMR. It says, how much do you think AI is fueling some of these videos, like the supposedly 1900 pictures of cowboys with Bigfoot?
My personal opinion is, yeah, AI is influencing all these videos.
Agreed.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. That's why I'm with me and Texter in the corner of this. I'd much rather get audio than a picture or a video these days, because I'm not an expert. Certainly, I can't break down video or film. I mean, I've never studied it. Before AI, I questioned lots of things. And now, with the intelligence of AI, I got to tell you what, unless you're professionally trained, I don't know. So you know what I do? I say no. I say that half of it is phony baloney, because, again, if you had that legitimate Dogman or Bigfoot picture or video, you're not going to probably put it out there, because, number one, they'll think it's AI and you'll just get ridiculed for being a hoaxer. So pictures and videos, for me, I don't give it a lot of credence. I'd rather look at somebody in the eye and talk to them about their encounter, or listen to some audio. That's where I am today. The AI, it's terrible. It makes great thumbnails for YouTube that attracts more people. Other than that, man, or making artwork for book covers.
Sure.
Writing books or encounters that are put out there.
That's another show. In fact, Jason, today's show, I had put it on Krista's little thing that she does for us. What do you call that? Where we track the shows. I put Jason and I discuss AI, and it's evil. That's what today's show is going to be. But I said, no, we'll just make it more. We'll make it about your book today, which we kind of did a good job with.
There's YouTubers out there using it to write encounters and pass them off.
Oh man, I've seen that. And and now they're coming out with a text, and now they're coming out with a software that if you take that and run it through this specialized software now, it can tell you whether it's made up from AI or not. And just another thing to make more millions of dollars, waste our time, sets back everybody to research another decade, because now you got something, that you want to believe, but in the back of your mind, it's fake. And that really sucks. It's great for the person that does this for entertainment value and don't care about putting out data and information. But, it is what it is with that.
Well, it's like we can't even get people to stop sending me stuff from Freaky Links. A television show. We know it was a television show. We have the actual puppet of the pterosaur at Lord Coleman's museum. They're like, do you think this is real? No, it was on TV. It was made for a show. Yep. I keep getting people sending me stuff like from Jurassic World promo stuff, and it's like, and they'll actually manipulate the video just a hair, so it slows it down to make it look. I'm like, no, that's not a real mosasaur. They're like, well, how do you know it's not a real mosasaur? Because it's the one from Jurassic World. I love that freaking mosasaur. Don't come to me and try and pass that off. Again, it was like with Matilda with all
Chewbacca
that.
Mask.
Yeah, there was a Chewbacca mask, and they're like, well, how do you know? I know what Chewbacca looks like. Like, don't play this game with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And that was all the questions.
Yep. Well,
Freaky Leaks was a television show from like the late 90s, early 2000s, just as a heads up for anyone who was wondering. It was on Fox. They did like a half a dozen episodes or something. Like, that was it. But there was one episode where it was a pterosaur that was shot by Union soldiers or whatever, and they have this photograph. That photograph is all over the damn place. And people are like, do you think this is real? No! It's like, it was on television, people.
That's the one where they're holding it. That's the one where they're holding it outstretched and everything, and they're all lined up behind it.
Yeah, all the soldiers in a line, and it's just sitting there on the that's it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, this was a great show, and Jason, I'm glad we got to talk a little bit about this today. And of course, the link is pinned up top, of course, next to my book. See how I strategically did that? You click on that, you get my book and Jason's.
Yes.
So yeah, and check out all his books. He's got many books and some other material, all found on Amazon. And I gotta say, Tex, thank you so much, and thank you to Jason, Krista, all you guys for the awesome birthday present while I was watching my Lions flounder and piss away your Super Bowl berth.
Hey, at least they didn't flounder like the Cowboys did.
No, they didn't, and
Yeah.
And the funny thing about the Cowboys, I mean, they lose. They've been out of the playoffs for 3 weeks now, and all you get on ESPN is, how about them Cowboys? What are they going to do next year? I know you're America's team, but my Lord, enough Cowboys already. God,
yeah, I get it.
But with that being said, I want to thank everybody in chat for wishing me the birthday wishes, and also the people on Facebook. And of course, I also got to thank Be Kind, Catherine Gay, Pancho Zorch, Michelle Delaney, Tex twice, becoming a member and gifting 5 members, Donnie Cho, DJ Tyler Radio became a member. Well, what did he do? He re-upped his membership and gave me a super chat. And Cool Hand and Ania, just a great day to end January. I feel a lot better now. You guys pumped me up. Forget about the Lions till next year. Thank you once again. I can't thank you guys enough for the awesome present that I'm about to receive here on the next, knowing Tex, I'll get it right before Alabama. When he gets out to the old post box or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
No
I
lie
love you guys. Krista, what's today? Tuesday. You got something going on Thursday. What you got Thursday?
Thursday we have his name is Rob Nichols, and he's from Southern Texas, around the San Antonio area, and he's a Bigfoot researcher. And we also have Josh Turner is going to be co-hosting with us on the Blondes for the whole month of February on Thursday evenings.
Yeah,
So,
there'll be fantastic. There'll be some great information coming there.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And again, don't forget to subscribe to Texas Front Porch on YouTube.
Yep.
Tex, you're out Mondays, as we all know. And now Texas Front Porch also does what again? I know Infamous Minds and Truth and Tinfoil and Dimension. What are the days for that, man? You got to send me the agenda. Tex.
All right.
When
So
are you on?
Sundays we've got
okay, forget it, man.
Truth or Tinfoil at 5:00, and then we've got the
Infamous
Minds at 6, and then we've got Mondays. We've got at 7. We got Diva's Dimension, and then at 8:00 you got Texas Front Porch.
Well, thank you.
Also,
Thank
real
you.
quick, can I say something real quick before we go?
Well, of course,
Don't
you
do it.
can,
It's trap.
Krista.
So we only need 22 more subscribers to hit 2,000.
All
Oh,
right.
give it
So
to
if
them,
you
folks. Come
haven't
on.
done so,
Come on,
please
subscribe.
subscribe to Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast. We'd appreciate it.
Wish I could subscribe twice. I'd do it for you.
Yeah. That's great, Krista. You'll get that easily before Thursday night, I'm sure.
Oh,
So that's awesome. Everybody subscribe to all our channels across the board. Thanks again for buying the books and showing your love with the super chats and everything else. We do appreciate you. Look forward to meeting a lot of you in Alabama here in another, I don't know, June 8th or whenever the hell it is.
yep.
But
June
thank
8th.
you for that. Jason, once again, man, thanks for coming on. Tex, thanks for the surprise. Love you, my man. Chris, as always, love you. And for the rest of
Thank
you,
you.
until next time, I am
Good night.
BMR. And for everybody else, we're out.